We have a new ranking out from Pro Football Focus, and it lists Cody Whitehair as the 11th best center in the NFL.
That's right. Pro Football Focus put out their center rankings, their top 32 ahead of the 2023 season, and coming in just outside of the top 10 is Cody Whitehair. Whitehair had quite a strange career with the Bears, shuffling about the interior offensive line after earning a 71 plus PFF grade, primarily as a center in his first 3 seasons in the league. He was kicked out to guard for the first half of 2019 season before spending the second half year back at center. The second half of 2020 through the end of the 2022 season were spent at guard. So it's been over the 2 seasons since we've seen him as a starting center where he performed better throughout his career. So an offensive lineman, but I was told, Chris, that this offensive line was horrible.
Okay.
But this, to me...
Name names? Who told you that?
No, just people.
Oh, just people.
Generic people? It's probably... You know what it is? It's the same people.
Generic people.
It's the same people. It's the same people that think that the Bears are going to be a 3-win team because they have no defensive ends.
Name names? Yeah, got a source on that? Same people?
The Venn diagram of those people is just a circle.
Sure.
It's just a circle.
Okay.
That's math for people. Isn't that math? Venn diagram math?
Geometry?
Geometry? No, I think it's a way to just compare things. I don't think it's either.
You can look that up.
I think it's language arts.
So your point, though, is that if this offensive line is so bad and the Bears are only going to win 3 games again, primarily, I think a lot of people would say the reason behind that is because the offensive line is not good. Pro Football Focus. Now you can either say that this is nonsense. It's June. It doesn't really matter what Pro Football Focus suggests as far as rankings. But having Cody Whitehair as 11, I do think it should add to another idea, though, with this offensive line, the upgrades that they've made here in the offseason and looking forward. Darnell Wright gets selected at 10 in the first round of the draft. That should solidify on the right side with Nate Davis, who Ryan Poles goes out and signs in free agency. So on the right side of your line, theoretically, is already a big upgrade, and it should be taken care of. Then you look at Cody Whitehair at center, right around the top 10 per Pro Football Focus. I'll take that, right? Like that seems to be a pretty good spot for Whitehair at center. And then on the left side, you have Braxton Jones, who started every game last season, and Tevin Jenkins at left guard, who the Bears got something out of. Heading in at this point last summer, we didn't know that Tevin Jenkins was going to be on this team going forward. And it was a question in the training camp whether or not he was going to be on this team going forward. If he would want to trade, if they were going to move him, what was Ryan Poles going to do? They got a pretty good football player out of him last season.
Yeah.
I like his mean streak. I think in the run game, he's very helpful. I just think that this has the makings of a group that may be less talented to some, but could be a top 15 offensive line in the NFL. They already led the league last year in rushing yards. Now, you could say that a lot of that goes to the quarterback.
Yes, it does.
But they still did it, right? It still happened. Any other team, you would be bragging about it.
I would say 70% of that is when Justin Fields is 60 yards downfield and the offensive line is just like, where did this guy go?
I'll take it.
I'll take it too. But I think that this is, when you say top 15, I think that is a good mark. I don't think they need to be the best offensive line in the league. It takes a while for offensive lines to come together. It's rare that you're just like, hey, let's sign this guy, let's draft this guy, let's move this guy over here, and this guy over here to right, and this guy over here to left, and then move the center around and do all this, and boom, best offensive line in football. That's not usually how it works. So it takes time. I like what the Bears have done with their offensive line. Give them some time to gel this year. Next year, I expect more from them. This year, I expect them to be top half of the league, be 16, 15, 14, right around there. Because if you're there, then you can gel. You take your time this year. You maybe add some more depth in the offseason, because that's a lot of the whole thing, right? We talk about the stretch of games a lot where they were putting up close to 30 points, where Justin was playing really well, where they were running the ball effectively, they were putting up numbers, they were blocking, there weren't a lot of sacks taken, all that kind of stuff. Then guys started getting hurt. There was no depth on this team because you were trying to get below the cap. You were trying to get rid of a lot of this dead money. And a lot of that meant sacrificing depth on the team. If you have depth on your line, if a guy gets hurt, you have that next guy up mentality. That's why it goes back to the defensive end conversation too. It's not like they're not lining anyone up out there. There are defensive ends that are going to be out there for the Bears.
Right.
They're not just going to be like, well, guys.
You get so triggered off of this. You feel like when people say they don't have anyone at defensive end, that like you think the Bears are going to roll out there with 2 tackles and no one on the edges.
And just like, well, hope this works.
And a bunch of, secondary people.
Yeah.
Right? Like corners and safeties just running around like it's TCU in college football.
Like they're
rolling with like 3 linemen and then 3 backers, and then the rest are just corners.
Are they top talent? No, they're not. But can they turn into something? Sure, give them a chance. With the offensive line, they've got good pieces there. They've got quality pieces there that can be developed over time. They're not winning the Super Bowl this year. So to say that the line is still horrible, I don't agree with. I think if they're top 15, they're good this year. If they can get to the top 10 in 2024, you can find success in the playoffs is by being a top team in a top offensive line, top 10 offensive line in the NFL when you're trying to be a playoff team.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I think Ryan Poles has done a really good job of solidifying some of the issues with the team over the offseason. You mentioned it, defensive end. That's what most Bears fans are still clamoring for. And they have the money. They have the most money in the NFL. There are names that are still out there. We brought you the story yesterday that Leonard Floyd is signing with the Bills for a 1-year deal. But there are some names that are out there that the Bears could go after and get. When I look at the offensive line, though, you mentioned depth. We ran through the starting 5 at the moment. Jones, Jenkins, Whitehair, Davis, Wright. Davis still hasn't been around. We'll see how that goes. But depth-wise,
he'll be there.
You have Lucas Patrick, Larry Borum, and you still have Alex Leatherwood, who's around. Whether or not he's going to be able to play at all at some point. I just like that. Like, it seems like on the second tier, we now have players who were starting for you last season. And you in the last 2 years, you have guys who were playing major snaps who are now your second line players who then allow you to have some depth. And I think that's the difference, right? The tear down, building back up is about depth because no team stays healthy for the entire season. And you need guys for spot starts or maybe large chunks of the season if someone goes down, God forbid.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why you saw this build it the right way, right? This quote, a lot of people were saying it, Cap and J Hood say it a lot. We've even heard, the front office and people and Matt Eberflus and everybody tied Ryan Poles, everybody in coaches, everything, building it the right way has been a mold for the Bears. And that doesn't mean go out and spend the most money. They didn't spend the most money on the highest price free agents on the offensive line. They want to build for sustained success. And that means drafting. That means getting good depth pieces. That means having guys that can step in when someone gets hurt. It is very rare, especially with the extra game, that guys are going to stay healthy for the entire season, let alone a playoff run, which is something we hope the Bears can do, not maybe this year, but next year, right? And so if you can build depth, especially on the offensive and defensive line, that helps everything. It's a trickle-down effect that helps everything, especially that offensive line. So I think they can be decent this year.